Hello and welcome to a courteous new episode of the StudioMEcast. I'm your host, Peter Regan, joining you from StudioME. And if you like the look and sound of this podcast, well, you can book one of our studio spaces yourself at StudioME.me. We're located in East Liberty, but we have our new location, The Meetup. So for any students or faculty or anyone else who's in Oakland who's looking to record something, you can book at StudioME.me and then walk on over to The Meetup. Today, my guest is Andrew Calvetti. He is a filmmaker who is in the final stages of completing his first feature film, Wild Dogs, and we're going to talk all about that. Sit back and enjoy this conversation with Andrew Calvetti. It's great to see you again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. It's been a while since we've seen each other. I think you said pre-pandemic.
Yeah.
Wow.
A lot of years.
So what have you been up to since then?
Oh man, some really cool stuff and just life. I did the whole working from home for a couple of years. It felt like a lot of years of editing commercials remotely, picking up small projects like that. I work for a production company still, and was doing a lot of commercial work, a lot of documentary style stuff through those sort of pandemic years, and I've done a little bit of commercial directing as well for some local businesses and some stuff down in DC. The big thing is starting my first feature, which sort of came out of I think cabin fever of the whole pandemic era of and it's been a long time. I've written a bunch of feature scripts. None of them seem to be landing with any kind of development funds or anything like that. And so I just decided it's time to sort of take matters into my own hands and make something happen on my own.
That's great. What was different about this one that helped it to land where the other ones maybe didn't?
I think the big thing was deciding that, just sort of redefining the metrics of approval, which I think in the past, I would write and maybe send something out for coverage or something like that. And I've written coverage for development houses before, and it's one of the most jading jobs you can have for a writer, because there's so much stuff out there, and you see so many ideas repeated so many times. Every day you're reading the same stuff, and so you're just hitting pass on so much, and so when you send something out for coverage, someone might pass on an idea that's really, really good. You might have put a lot of work into the writing of a script, and it could be a very good script, but just depending on who it goes to and what their taste is, you might get pretty negative feedback.
For coverage, do you mean having a script writer review it?
Yeah. So coverage would be Script Pipeline does it. There's all these different places.
Right.
And what usually you get is and there's AI versions of it now. But when I wrote coverage, I was in college, and it was an internship that I had. You're reading a script or two a day. You're writing a 3-page summary of it, and then you're breaking it down into a bunch of different categories that maybe specific categories to the development house that you're in, and those are going to hit some of the real basic ones, character, mood, tone, and then there might be some breakouts depending on where you are, just where is this on a political level, what are the marketable aspects of this, and what are the things that are less marketable, and that's the funny thing about Hollywood is the true gatekeepers are college kids, because these interns are the ones that are reading scripts that are coming into these houses, and before these scripts go to higher level, decision makers, they go to college kids, who are making decisions about which ones are going to advance to that next level of readership, which is a little depressing and also like kind of cool.
Yeah, you're right.
You know?
You put it nicely there. It is.
Yeah.
It's sort of like the first line of, I don't want to call it defense, but yeah, the first hurdle there. And it's interesting that it would be made up of a bunch of interns like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's fascinating. So, because I mean, I'd heard of Script Pipeline and looked at, script readers and all that, but I didn't realize the role that what you just lined out for like the machine of the industry is. It's like, I guess that is a significant portion of influence and power. You know? So that's fascinating.
there were days that like I would be, this was a smaller development house in LA, and they would sometimes like I would spend the whole day on Inktip, which is like a script database, and I would just be like combing through. I'd be reading hundreds of log lines, for days, and so like I don't know. I guess if you're a writer and you're looking at like, is anyone even looking at this database that I could pay money to put my script out? Like, people are looking at it, and there are people who are searching for gold, and it like the big lessons there were like your logline really matters. What you say in that one sentence blurb that's going to stand out in a page of 70 different loglines, like it really, really matters. And then get some kind of award from somewhere. It doesn't even matter what the award is, because, if I'm trying to make it through 80 pages of loglines in a week or something like that, and I'm going to select maybe 10 scripts to like request and read and do coverage on. It's not worth my time to like take a real gamble on like having a conversation with a writer, getting their script from them just to find out like, this person has no idea what they're doing. So what I would often look for is like, here's a good logline. That's an interesting concept. And I'm going to go and look at like the writer's like resume basically. And like, if I pull up, if 2 scripts have caught my eye, and I look at, the resume and one person got like quarterfinalist, Scriptapalooza, whatever, and the other person doesn't have anything, like I'm probably not going to read the one that doesn't have anything. I'm going to look for like somebody else in the industry has said that this person is worth looking at. And
at that point, you're looking at so much stuff. You're hoping for any excuse to narrow it down.
Yeah, exactly.
Point. Wow.
Exactly.
So looking at all these scripts and reading these, did that have a positive influence on your writing? Did it give you a sense of nihilism? Like how did that affect you?
Yeah, that's a great question. At the time, I was like, I never want to write a drug cartel script.
Okay.
I just got really sick of reading drug cartel scripts.
Oh,
no. But I think like it, in some ways, it helped me understand like why I might get a negative response back on something that I think is really good, and to be able to appropriately qualify it, in my own sort of like value of my work, like, knowing what the life of a script reader is, and just being inundated with ideas and concepts and seeing really good ideas and like ideas that fail to deliver, or an idea that really like, there are scripts that and writing styles that are well suited to like writer directors, where they're going to take this script and they can see it and they can know how to execute to make something that they know is going to be satisfying to them. But the script itself might be too sparse for some other reader to like sit down and look at and know like, oh, this is going to be good. Like,
right.
And so I think that's where I wrote like 2 features in like 2020, and the one I like took through quite a few drafts and had some actors that were interested. I had a lot of people who were interested in making it, you know, but it would always get like pass on coverage, even though like there were people who were like, "This is really good, Andrew. I really like where this goes. This story has like some real thematic depth, and it has some strong visuals." And we knew that like, if we can get the money to do this, like we can make this locally, and we know that we could produce something that is high quality. But if you're outside of my like sphere of knowing these different locations and this one actor that I'm gonna get because he said he would be in it, like,
right,
it was a sparse script, you know, and it was really short. So eventually I just like tried to bend the script to hit those notes, you know, that I would get back this like feedback, and I chased it down through so many revisions that eventually I realized like, I don't recognize this idea anymore, and I am tired of it, and I feel like I've reached the bottom of the pool, like, and it's no longer feeling like something that's stretching out of sight. Like the depth of the story doesn't feel like it carries on beyond what I can understand about it or know about it. And that was really discouraging. And also it was in the midst of COVID. And if you were going to work with a SAG actor, just the COVID precautions inflated budgets by like, if you're going to work within SAG, like the amount your budget had to increase for COVID compliance was something like a third.
Oh, wow.
And so a film that we were like, you know, if we could just get like, you know, $500,000 or something like that, all of a sudden we're looking at like 800 or, you know, and those were numbers that like, who's going to give me any money to make my first feature, like much less that much.
Right.
So I just sort of shelved it. And then, got cabin fever.
Right on. So for this feature that you are, congratulations, very near completing.
Thank you.
It's the title is Wild Dogs, and why don't you tell us a bit about like how long did it take you to write that one?
I did sort of I'm a bit of a romantic, and so I, like, in the spring of 2021, I drove my van to a cabin in Maine and tried to like do something awesome, and like pretty much failed to write anything worthwhile. It was April. It was everything from like sunny in Brooklyn to like blizzard in Vermont, and then like just beautiful in Maine. And I like sort of locked myself into this cabin and just tried to write for like 5 days solid, and came away with something like, I don't know, 30 pages maybe, which is really good for me. I'm a very slow writer. But I would go on these walks, you know, through the mountains and stuff, and came away from it feeling like none of these ideas are worth pursuing in a film. Like, except for one. There was one scene that as I was writing it, I was laughing out loud at it, like a crazy person alone in a cabin. I was like just laughing out loud at like this one character that showed up pretty fully formed and was saying things that I thought were really funny. And so I like took that, but on the whole was feeling really discouraged driving back to Pennsylvania from there. And I like stopped at, I don't know, you can cut this if this is like kind of a boring story. I stopped at Emily Dickinson's house on the way back. And I love Emily Dickinson. I remember doing like a big paper on her in high school, you know, and like, I'm like going to be going through Amherst. Like, I'm going to stop at Emily Dickinson's house and see what happens. Because people see ghosts, you know, people see like the ghost of Lemony Dickinson all the time.
Fantastic.
Stuff, so. And it was closed. Everything was closed down, partially because of the pandemic, and also like I think they were doing some remodeling of the house so the grounds were empty, nobody was there. And I just like parked and walked up and sat on the porch for a while. And like Emily Dickinson is really interesting because like most of her work was recognized sort of posthumously. And her like reason for continuing to write for as long as she did, her entire life, like was not the affirmation of an audience. Like that was not her reason for doing it. Her gifts were often poems, or her poems were often gifts for people, or just practices for herself, sort of in her solitude, you know. And I felt some really profound encouragement from her story as I was sitting there, that like, I don't need this script I don't need it to be approved by these external voices. Making a feature film is something I wanted to do since I was like 6 years old. And if I make it, even if nobody likes it, it will be a huge success for me. And from there, it just sort of set me free to like be really experimental and just sort of forget all the training that I had in like, you know, Save the Cat or like, you know, beat structures or those sorts of things.
So you freed yourself from the need of approval for this project, which I think for first features especially, that's a great idea. Like there's a lot of ways to do it. I've seen people do it. But there is an element, like for me with the feature I'm working on, there's aspects to it where I'm kind of realizing I'm not going to get to make another movie this way again.
Right.
Even if, and it's not like, oh, I'll never get to make something that I want to again. Like not that, but just the process that I have for this. There's things that, I mean, part of it's just it takes too long to do it the way I'm doing it now, you know. But
too long is an interest. Well, just so I don't forget to say this, because I think like for people like you and me on the front end of these huge projects, I think this sort of industry and this craft can really undervalue or sell short the idea of taking a long time to make something. Some of that is just like, it can be really hard to maintain collaboration across many years. But like, if you're on the front end of, you know, a career of making features, or even if it's just something you want to do once in your life, you know, I think like, if you don't have a huge budget, like time is the thing that you get to have. That like, if you're a studio filmmaker, if you're working with a large budget from an investor or a studio or something like that, you don't get to have that amount of time. Like the contracts are going to prevent you from taking 5-10 years or whatever. And like, if you don't have those obligations, like I don't see any reason to like not use the time. Like that's your superpower, you know, is like, you can take a long time to do something. Like that's how you can chase down a level of quality in, you know, production value that wouldn't be accessible to you if you were doing something on like a timeline that competes with the industry, you know?
Now, I agree with that for sure. My thoughts on it also is I'm the kind of person where if there's something I really want to do, it doesn't really matter to me how long it's going to take. I very much play and have played the long game with a lot of things that are really important to me. And it's worked out pretty well so far.
Yeah.
And there's already, it's especially because of what movies are from like separate from other mediums. There are questions that are pretty normal to ask, like, hey, what am I going to get out of this? A lot of the time people don't ask, what am I going to get out of a painting? It's like, well, you made a painting. That's the thing, But for movies, it's always been oriented around business from the beginning, since before they were even telling stories with this stuff. So, but for me, it's like, well, on a lot of levels, I've gotten plenty out of it besides, the whole reason I'm doing this, which is I just want to make movies. But I wouldn't be working here if I hadn't started making that film.
Right.
And I love working here. There's all kinds of stuff that I wouldn't know how to do. I wouldn't be able to make the shorts that I've made since I started working on this thing. And it's ultimately been hugely a net positive for me, and it's not even done yet. And it's also, I really like working on it. And part of me is enjoying it more and more now, partly because it's going better, which is nice, but also because I'm realizing there's stuff I'm getting to do for this movie that I probably won't be able to realistically afford the time toward in the future, at least not on a regular basis, And so while I'm getting to, paint miniatures and do stuff like that and build models and, do all these other things in filmmaking, which in the future I'd like to still work with these elements, but the way that it would probably work out is someone else is building those things. And I like building models. It's not what I like doing more than directing, but it's while I get to do it, I'm going to enjoy it, But it is a really weird feeling when you shoot something like 8 years ago and then all this time later you finally finish that shot and it works. And it's like, man, I've been waiting to see that for a long time. And I'm really glad it works, because it's like I can't go back 8 years ago and do a pickup, which is just, so it's a great feeling when it all comes together. But so for your film, Wild Dogs here, can you tell us, you were talking about log lines before. Can you give us a log line for this?
Or
did you even do it? Okay.
I don't think so. I'm going to plead the fifth on,
no worries,
on log lines. Not because I it's some secret that I don't want to give away. It's just, it's a really challenging story for me to sort of I haven't gotten that far yet.
Okay.
Into being able, I will have to do that eventually. But yeah, I haven't gone quite that far yet. I've tried at different times and each time it's different.
Well, why don't you tell us a bit about the writing process? Do you normally write by hand? Do you type stuff up? Do you bullet point? Do you start with fade in? What is it actually like to someone just in the room with you? What does it look like when you're writing?
This script I wrote in Celtics, which is I don't even know if it exists anymore.
I have forgotten all about that.
Yeah. I mean, I got this, and not even, I think maybe there's some sort of cloud-based one now or something. I think that's what Celtics is now. It's cloud-based, but I had the circa 2012 downloaded onto you can't even run it on Macs anymore because it doesn't work on it's like an Intel. You can only run it on Intel Macs. Wow. So I wrote it on that, and in I don't have access to Celtics anymore. So any revisions have happened in Final Draft and then pasted into a PDF export with stuff sort of redacted, because for whatever reason Final Draft can't import my Celtics script. So I've got this real patchwork quilt of a shooting script now, which is kind of fun.
Yeah.
But the writing process, a friend of mine, actually the main actor in my film was my writing professor in college.
Really?
Yeah. And we're really good friends. And he has just been a huge part of the film the whole way through, primarily by being the main actor. But also, he was one of the few people that read the script, that read the drafts along the way, and was able to like catch sight of it and give me the kinds of notes that I needed to hear that would push the story forward and not sort of paralyze it or reduce it down to something that left me with no sort of room to dream. But on the front end of the writing, he said like, just tell an Andrew tale, you know? And I sort of took that to heart and just came up with a bunch of scenes that I loved, and sort of strung them together. And some of them didn't have like, there was a through line, but it wasn't super clear to me when I wrote them, like how all of these things go together.
Right.
And I was really inspired by this book by David Lynch called Catching the Big Fish, which is a real short book. You can like listen to it on a 2-hour drive if you have Audible or something like that. Yeah. And he reads it himself, which is awesome. But his process of making Inland Empire, which I actually hadn't seen at the time, but he talked about how he just wrote, he would shoot a piece with Laura Dern. He would like write a monologue and they would go and film it. And then like, this was pretty fun, we should do something else. And they would like come up with another scene and they would shoot that. And it wasn't until maybe like a year or two of doing that he started to get a sense of like, these things fit together, you know, and they tell a cohesive story. But he just sort of trusted that the ties between these things would become apparent if he gave it enough time. And not that I'm David Lynch, obviously. And it's maybe a little bit of hubris to assume that like, well, it worked for him, maybe it'll work for me, you know?
Oh, I don't know. It's like, I mean, I understand why you might have some trepidation for that, but if you're, I mean, there's nothing wrong with being inspired by the techniques of legends, you know? Yeah, it's like, right. I took a painting class in art school because Akira Kurosawa would paint his storyboards, and I just wanted to figure out, like, what is he getting out of that? Like, is the juice worth the squeeze? Does that work for me? Like, I don't even know why he would do that. You know, it's like, just like, it's takes more time. It's more expensive. Why are you making these paintings? You know, and I learned a lot from painting, you know, and so you know, seeing the technique of another artist is great to just try out, even if it doesn't work for you. It's like you're probably gonna learn something from it. So I think that's great to do. Yeah.
Well, and it was what, in this case, it's what sort of gave me the confidence to try, you know, like, I was able to go out and start with a script that maybe didn't feel like it had reached the ground, you know, yet, in like in a certainly not in like an industry sense. Like the relationships weren't fully developed to where, you know, all of these connections across the script made some kind of huge moment of sense at the end, you know, like, but I felt like I can begin. And that was the thing that I just needed to do. And I thought that I could shoot it all in a month, in the summer of 2021. And a lot of it was just like me going out with my camera and the actor, and there were other actors that came on, and like I would try to like, rally a few friends, to, hit record on the sound or help me just carry props or something like that. And I think I was able to shoot something like 11 or 12 days in my first like window. And I came away from it with like maybe half of the film shot. And so then I just felt pretty crushed because that was my like window. I was going to shoot the whole thing, but I was just too tired by it. Like I would shoot for doing like running camera, directing, building sets, managing props, running sound, trying to like produce. Like I would maybe be able to go for like 2 days and then I would just collapse and like couldn't think for maybe the weekend, and then I would have to like claw my way back up to like go out again, and so the idea of like an 18-day shoot where we're just like going balls to the walls like the whole time and coming out of it with every scene shot, it was not realistic to do that in like when I was wearing so many hats that it just wasn't possible to do that much, so I got most of the like I got all of the sort of like conversations shot and left a lot of sort of interludes and action scenes. A lot of that just sort of like fell by the wayside of like, I will get this at a time when I know how to get it. I don't know how to shoot these yet, but I got all of the like sort of more theatrical moments of like where these characters almost walk onto a stage and share a conversation for maybe 5 or 6 pages or something like that.
How did you feel about the footage you were getting? Were you happy with it?
The first day was an absolute disaster.
Yeah,
like
too.
It was the first night we went to. We were gonna shoot from something like, I don't know. A lot of this film takes place at night, and I was shooting at high summer, so like it doesn't get dark until like almost 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
So we would go out, and like there was a payphone that I had found, and I wanted to shoot this scene. This was our first day, and like I got a frame up and I was like, frick, this looks awesome. This looks like a real movie. Like, that like, that almost, there's just like a layer of magic almost that happens when it doesn't look homemade anymore. And this didn't look homemade. It was like really cool. But there were just cars driving by like every 3 seconds, and the audio was just completely screwed. We couldn't get a word out without, a semi truck rolling by, or like Jake brakes like killing us, or a train or something like this. Was up in Beaver Falls. So like lots of trains on the main drag, lots of traffic. And then like a bunch of like police cars roll by, and they were like, hey, did you guys see anyone like run through here? And we were like,
that's
what?
Exactly
He's like,
what you want to hear.
And we were like, no, we didn't see anything. He was like, yeah, there was just a gunfight a block that way, like an Old West like gunfight.
Jeez.
Like, we didn't hear any of that. And they're like, yeah, we're gonna subpoena your footage. And I was like, I mean, there's nothing on here. I mean, they were gonna like, we'll get in contact with you. I'll have to take your information if we need to subpoena your footage in case. And I was like, I mean, that's such a pain in the ass for me.
Yeah.
And also we were shooting anamorphic. And so everything, I was just like, if they ask for it, I'm going to give it to them, but I'm not de-squeezing it or anything like that. And it's going to be like the most indecipherable, like squished gobbledygook.
Oh my goodness.
They never asked for it, which was nice.
Oh, okay.
But like we like failed to get the scene. So we like regrouped, like, let's go over to this bridge. Let's try to shoot something there. And then I was like, I didn't have shot lists for that part. And I was just trying to like wing it. And I was like, this is all just shit, And so that first day, I remember like the next day I just like sort of washed up on the shore of a friend's place, who's another local producer, and like just had to like someone had to tell me like it's gonna be okay. You can go and try again.
So did your friend tell you everything was going to be okay?
Yeah. And they helped me. Like there was a pretty large scene coming up that was like just going to be a pretty heavy day, and I just didn't know how to plan it out. Because I've become a much better producer, but it is still like, that is not a hat that I wear with confidence. But we like sat down with a piece of paper, and my friend looked at the script and like, okay, so like when we get here on this day, like where do we want to put the camera, to start with? And I just decided like, well, let's get a wide, and so she like drew the camera on a piece of paper and like put number 1 next to it, and like, and then we like sketched out, like where the actors were going to be, and then they're going to come over here and do this thing. And after we've got it from camera 1, what's going to happen after that? It's like, well, we're probably going to do cross coverage because this is what I know how to do. This film is not winning any awards for like creative, inventive cinematography, and like it's I would get to like, if I could just get through a scene and it would stick together in the edit, I'm like, yes. It doesn't need to redefine editing.
Right.
Just needs to stick together, so we would like draw the next camera setup and like, that's going to be number 2.
There can be a lot of pressure for people on their first feature to make something great or avant-garde or whatever. And making those types of decisions of, I'm going to do shot, reverse shot, I'm shooting for coverage, is a big part of, directing and producing. So what are, that being said though, what are some of the strengths of what you're working toward? An Andrew folktale, like, what are the things about this film that you really want to focus on, prioritizing, I guess?
That's a really good question. Let me think about that for a second. I think that one of the things that I set out to do was take people on a journey to some really interesting places. There's a lot of texture, and there's a lot of hidden places, and places that have a lot of like, there's like the mantle of time on them is heavy in this part of the world, because of how much industry has come and gone, how much people have built and walked away from. That's something that I've become really enamored with. Just some of the heritage that is here, and I was born and raised in Pittsburgh, and I've really come to like just respect and love the places in this area where you can see how long things have been here, you know? And so I got really excited about creating a story that would let me take a camera to some of these, whether it's like, abandoned mills or really interesting, like old cisterns or train tunnels and things that like I would just stumble upon, driving around. And a lot of time on this film has been spent like, I just like get in the car and drive and just keep my eyes open for like, that would be a really interesting place. Or I stumble upon something, and like there was a scene in particular we had shot that after that first window of production in the summer of 2021. On the last day, the main character, we shot a scene where the main character sort of receives these like sort of his instructions for the next step of his quest. And this is sort of a quest film. The character tells him that he's going to have to go underground, you know, and I wasn't sure exactly what that was going to look like on camera, but Dan Williams, the main actor, he and I we were on a walk in the woods on New Year's Day, and we were in an area where there was an old neighborhood that had just trees had grown up around it, and all the houses were empty, and we were just sort of wandering around through these places. And as we're like going back down to the road where we had parked, I don't remember if it was Dan or if one of us saw there was like a little bit of sidewalk that went off to the left, and like it drew our eye, and we saw this hole in the ground that was like a tiny little brick tunnel, probably 3 feet tall, maybe 2.5 feet wide or something like that, down into the ground. And we, pulled out our, phone lights, and we're just like, what the heck is this? And we just start crawling down this hole, and we find this basically a catacomb down under the hillside.
Yo.
And it was pretty big. And there were all these little like chambers and like little tunnels that had these little doors that would go into other places, and then like one really large room. To this day, I'm not sure what it was.
Yeah, that's a weird thing.
It's a really weird thing.
It wasn't like a cellar, like it wasn't like a basement for another.
It didn't look like a basement. Maybe it was some old like municipal like storage thing for, I don't know, like I truly don't know.
Could it have been a bunker?
Maybe
like a Cold War thing or something.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it totally could have been.
Huh.
It totally could
what
have been.
What a cool find.
Yeah,
awesome.
And I was like, dude, this is it.
Yeah.
Like this is the place where you have to go underground, like here. And so then like the next summer we spent a day like we like parked my van up in the woods where like it would kind of not be seen, and we carried like some big like battery blocks and some like lighting stuff, and I like wired a light into the ceiling of this place so that we could get like something like exposure down here. And there were so many beautiful textures and odd stuff coming out of the walls. I'm like, I don't know what this stuff is, but it was really beautiful to me, and I just felt like this is such a cool thing to show people.
Yeah.
Because most people are going to see that hole and not think I'm going down there, or like it might just like,
but
be a
people
really
wonder what
idea.
it's like, though.
Right?
Once you see that, you're like, "What? I wonder what is down there." It's
Yeah.
like even like if you're walking through the woods and you see a hole in the ground, like for some animal, you're like, "I wonder what lives there."
Yeah, what's it look
it's
like
like I'm not going to stick my finger down in there, but like
Right.
I wonder what it is. And
Yeah.
so that's really cool. I think that's such a wonderful perspective to have with filmmakers as well. Is the part of the fun of film is that you can show people stuff that like they wouldn't otherwise be able to see, stuff that you can't quite do on stage or in a book. It's like, you can imagine it, but like that's the thing that is so cool about movies, is that you can show people that, and you can give people a sense of wonder or mystery, or just spark their imagination or spirit in another way by showing them something that, for other words, is just cool. It's like, wow, I haven't seen this stuff yet. And just, that exploratory nature that you have for finding these places is, I identify with that too, because anytime I've gone around just exploring Pittsburgh, like with a friend, just to look for stuff, and usually it's with the, I wonder if I'll find a place to film in the back of my mind, but just exploring, you always find something that you're like, how long has this been here? 'Cause you're right. So that's phenomenal. So you got to shoot there and do the whole, that's awesome.
It was a rough day.
Yeah.
It was a really long day and a lot of heavy lifting. But that's, I think, been that's been a really rewarding part of the process. And like, I've just discovered how much I love production design. I really love that, and it's given me a lot to think about in terms of like what makes a film feel real, beyond just, you know, an actor's ability to like embody, you know, a story and a character that doesn't exist, has never been real, you know, and will never be like a real thing. And the role of I'm still formulating, I think, some cooking on thoughts on this, but just like, you know, there's so many reasons that like that real life feels real, that like I don't doubt, you know, the reality of this conversation that we're having right now. And there's so many reasons that we're sitting in this room right now. The huge chain of events that have led to like this moment, like we have a memory of those events, you know? And so this feels very real because we know all of the things that have led to the point where this moment is kind of inevitable, you know? And I think that's one of the things that I've learned throughout this film, is that like, to make a film feel real means creating that dream of the long chain of events that led to the moment, the scene being inevitable, you know? And some of that, what makes me really excited about that from like the stance of a production designer, is like finding old stuff, you know, or giving somebody a prop that looks like it's been a lot of places before it got to them. Something that looks like, oh, there's a story to this room that they're in. This person, you know, maybe if someone brings you into their space and you see like the mark of like years that character's been doing something there, that creates a little bit of that feeling of how much the timeline of this story stretches beyond the beginning of my film, you know? And that's, I think for me, can be a lot of where like realism or the suspension of disbelief like takes root, you know? So I've just loved the chance to find really interesting sets just in this area, this little part of the world that we're in. And I've also really enjoyed having the chance to build some sets just from scratch, you know, in like warehouse spaces or basements of other places, you know, just empty rooms that I could find where someone's like, yeah, you can build something there over the weekend and tear it out by Monday, you know, like,
right.
So yeah, that's something that I've been really excited to explore with my film, and I think is like maybe one of the features of it that I'm really proud of, you know,
the actual like believability of the world itself.
Yeah,
that's huge. Yeah.
And some of it is just like some luck. Like I didn't set out to make a period film, but it has just sort of naturally slipped into this like pre-cell phone era, you know, like down to like a lot of the buildings that show up are buildings that don't look like they've been updated in the 2000s, you know. The main prop car in the film is just my van, which is from 1992. Like, and so a lot of the design of the film sort of suggests, and this isn't something that I've like worked super hard to curate, but I've tried to like frame out like, you know, like there's no Teslas,
right?
No, but there's never a scene where a Tesla drives by, you know, and so it has been really cool, and I think it's like another just sort of lucky feature of making a film in this part of the world where like you can find those textures And people are figuring out how to make cell phones work for story, but I still really enjoy not having to deal with them.
Yeah.
The convenience of them in a script.
Yeah.
I love
too.
a payphone.
Yeah, absolutely. There's a payphone down the road here by the studio, and every time I go past it, I, think of some idea of like, we could make something with that. It's like covered with like stickers and graffiti, and like, because there's other payphones that they've ripped the phones out because they're not there anymore, but there's one that it's still got the actual piece to it and the cable, and every time I pass it, I'm like, man, that would be something to do. But well, that's such a cool thing to be able to say about your film, of being able to achieve that. I guess my next question is, your last day of filming, did you know it was the last day of filming, and that we wrapped, and when you did that, what did that feel like?
I thought I had wrapped the main actor last year, and it was a really bad feeling because I knew there's some stuff that I wish I would have gotten, but I just feel like I can't ask him to come back again. And I don't want to overstay, because I didn't want to lose friendships over this project, and that there's a lot of stories of filmmakers either abandoning their communities to make their film, or for that driving ambition to just sort of put some of their relationships in difficult positions, and I really didn't want to do that. So I was just aware that I've asked Dan to do a lot, and at some point I need to set him free, from this. But there he had said if there's something especially if the ending, if we just haven't quite found the ending, or if there's some shot that is going to make or break the film to get, just let me know,
okay,
and we'll get it, so okay. And then it was last month, or earlier this month, we went for there was a scene that just was going to make all the difference in the world for how the film concludes. And
is it part of the ending itself?
Yeah, it's part of the ending itself.
Oh, wow,
yeah,
cool.
And we got that, and one little pickup, and then I was like, all right, now you're officially wrapped, and all of those holes are full. There's still been a lot of some plate shots that I had to get, some sort of complicated VFX that I had to learn, complicated for me, not complicated for a professional VFX person, but for me, pretty complicated. And there's still a shot that I have to get, and it's no actors. It's just a shot that I need of my van pulling out from a road. But for a long time, it's just felt like I'll never be done shooting this thing. I cannot imagine the feeling of actually being confident that I'm done. And I'm pretty much there now. I'll probably get that shot this weekend, maybe tomorrow.
Nice.
So I haven't given myself the permission to feel maybe that feeling that you're alluding, I haven't let myself feel I'm done shooting. Haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah. Well, with this film, you're still in you got to do that. You're in the audio mixing process, stuff like that, right?
It goes to audio mix next month.
Great.
Yep.
And when you started this film, did you also start to think about distribution, or where this film would end up? been that? As you were talking about with like script pipeline, people will pass a script for any number of things, and a lot of the time it could be for marketability purposes. Like who's the audience for this and all.
Yeah.
But you also talked about how you weren't going for that, but like that wasn't one of your goals or guiding lights for it. But was distribution or where this film's going to end up, like is that something that you've thought about up to this point or you have plans for?
Yeah. On the front end, it really was just this is something I feel I need to do, just if for no other reason than just as like sort of an act of love to like the 6-year-old Andrew that's still somewhere down inside and wants to have made a movie, and I've tried and failed many times, and and so on the front end, I think my thoughts around what I would do with this film when it was done were pretty much capped at like, we'll get a great theater in Pittsburgh. We'll gather up everybody who collaborated on it and we'll show it. And like, that'll be great. I had made a short a couple of years earlier in like 2019 that like everybody that worked on it, everybody that had seen it was like, this is just like festival fodder. Like festivals are going to eat this up. It's short, has a recognizable actor, has a fun idea and good production value. And then like I submitted it to probably 15 or 20 festivals and like nobody wanted to play it. I got it got a premiere at a very small regional, maybe like not even mid-tier festival. It had like, an online COVID release. And that was fun. I was glad that it played somewhere, but it like really, I think, it was pretty discouraging as far as the idea of going to festivals or, something like that. That short did get a kind of distribution through Dust, which is a YouTube channel.
Yeah.
Dust bought the premiere rights for it, which was really cool, and gave it most of the views that it has. But for this feature, on the front end, I really was not thinking about festivals, and I had I've been pretty enamored with some of the like sort of guerrilla or sort of renegade cinema festivals that are out there, people that are trying to put the spotlight on weird experimental non-industry sort of sanctioned filmmaking. Some of those festivals are really cool, and I've definitely had like sort of a pipe dream that a place like that would want to show something like this. It's just a very handmade film, and then I got a chance to go to South by Southwest this spring, and that was really the first proper festival I'd ever been to. And like the midnight shorts or the midnight sort of feature blocks and stuff, like where you get into like just odd, cool genre films. Like a lot of festivals will sort of reserve those spots for sci-fi, thriller, horror, those sorts of things. And it left me sort of, well, first of all, I got really jazzed about like just the film festival energy is so fun. Like so many of these people have put aside like time and resources just to be there and watch a movie that they know nothing about because they were able to get in, and like every day you're sitting down multiple times a day to see something that is in a black mystery box, that you have no idea what you're about to get. And it's in a good theater with good sound, and that was pretty infectious. And I just started to think, man, I really hope I get a chance to be in a room, not South by Southwest, but like I would love to be in a room like this with my film, just with an audience that like has made a lot of choices to get there and wants you to succeed, you know? So, and some of the films I realized, like, there are like small films playing at this festival, you know, there are first time films playing, films from first time directors playing. Nothing that felt like quite at the sort of small scale of mine, you know, but like it left me feeling like there's a festival where it would be possible to play this, you know. So that's sort of like, that's as far as I've gotten on like a distribution thought of just like, love to get it into some festivals. And if not, like if it sort of goes the way of my short, like maybe I'll just like put a projector and some speakers in the back of my van and like just drive to weird little river towns along the Ohio and just see if anyone wants to watch it.
That sounds awesome.
Which would be pretty dope, actually.
Yeah, that sounds great. Actually, yeah.
Find little towns that have some weird paranormal museum or something like that. You know, because I want people to see it, and I want people to get a chance to see the hard work of all the actors. Mm-hmm. You know, every actor that's in it poured so much love and time and care into some really strange scenes and odd ideas that maybe they didn't even fully grasp, but trusted that I knew where it was going, which at times I didn't.
Right.
You know?
Well, I bet even if you reached out to some of those museums and stuff and said, hey, I got this movie, can we screen it? You know, I bet a lot of them would go for it, honestly. It sounds like, that sort of roadshow idea is really cool.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
So, traveling, like, I'm not a musician, but I love the idea of being a roadie.
Yeah.
It just sounds so fun.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You're not a musician. That surprises me, actually, a lot.
College choir.
Okay.
That's pretty much it.
I don't know why over the years that I've known you, you've kind of struck me as someone who probably would be, but interesting.
Yeah.
Well, cool.
Yeah, beyond choir, that's pretty much pretty much it.
Well, so how long do you think the mix is going to take? Do you have any projected date for?
Yeah. So I've sort of got the mixer that I'm collaborating with. We've sort of got like the fall blocked off, the sort of third quarter of the year. He'll begin work sort of mid-September. I've worked with a lot of mixers in like sort of the commercial space and, collaborated on sound design and stuff. So I'm familiar with, a little bit with the process, but I've never worked on something this long,
Right.
And something this where there's the horizon's really broad for what sound design could look like, and truthfully, sound design is what is going to kind of make or break the film, the ability to create a feeling of dread, or relief or something like that, which like the film moves through these spaces. I think that happens like 75% in the ear, and so I'm really excited to sort of see what my sort of temp sound design like can become in the hands of a professional. And truthfully, I'm just relieved that there's a part of the process that I am not doing.
Right. Yeah.
That's really exciting to me to like have another imagination attached,
Yeah. That, just the element of collaboration is just, people say you don't make a movie alone, and
there's like no way.
Yeah. I made a short once, like by myself, just to, what would it be like,
right.
And it's like, I set up the tripod and camera and hit record, and I was the only character in it, and it was like this post-apocalyptic thing about a guy looking for food, but he's built his own religion and built an idol that he's like giving his food to, and he's starving,
Wow.
It sounds way cooler than it ended up being.
It does sound pretty cool.
Thanks, but it and that was one of the things where I explored all over, to find these abandoned places, around, and it was a good exercise. It was not a good film, but I did it, and it was a good exercise. I'm glad I did it.
Yeah,
and because I already, knew and appreciated the collaborative element, but trying to do it without that, just made me love collaboration even more.
Yeah.
So which I was aware of, like, that's kind of why I'm making this thing, is to like doing this other thing even more. But well, that's congratulations, man. Thanks. It's a huge deal to be, at this, like, in the end in sight, so to speak. Like, sound is, a big hurdle. It takes time, all that, but having at least mostly shot your film, and having the edit together for it, that's congratulations. And for it's a long time coming too, with you, as you're saying, 6-year-old Andrew now gets a movie. So I'll leave you with one last question here then, about it. With 6-year-old Andrew and you now, is this the kind of movie that 6-year-old Andrew would have liked to watch? Or is it more of a reflection of, I don't know, how you've grown since then?
That's a very unique question. I think 6-year-old Andrew would be way too scared to watch it.
Awesome.
I could not watch horror or thriller or anything when I was growing up. Like Muppets Christmas Carol was too much.
That scared me too.
Yeah, I mean, admittedly terrifying.
It's ghosts.
Yeah. Yeah, there were a whole bunch of films that would, like, sometimes, like, my family would, like, put on, and nobody's thinking, like, we have to like be careful about this. But, like, do you ever see The Shaggy Dog? It's an old Disney film where a guy turns into a dog.
Tim Allen one?
I think this was maybe before Tim Allen.
Yeah. Either way, I haven't seen it, but I'm trying to place it.
Freaked me the heck out.
Yeah?
Yeah. And so I just avoided anything scary, like the plague, because I would get so scared. And it would, like, stick for years. Something that would, like, play in a trailer before getting to watch Monsters Inc. or something like that in the theater. Like, I was terrified of going to the theater because of trailers. Like, I would see something that was really scary in a trailer and then, like, wouldn't be able to enjoy the movie,
Wow. Yeah.
And now I'm making, like, a movie that has some pretty scary moments in it, or, like, they're scary to me. We'll see if they land as scary. But I don't think it would have been Andrew Fair, for as a child. But I think there are things in it that I can see connecting with things back then. Back then I wanted to make superhero films. I wanted to I had written sort of this, like, knockoff Lord of the Rings, when I was 10. I wrote a ton of pages for it, that I was going to do with all my friends. And I was, like, making armor. I was making swords and costumes, having little, like, read-throughs with my buddies, and I've, like, thought about that a couple of times when I've been, like, building sets now, and, like, the amount of time that I've spent finding props, creating things. There's some real, like, ties back into the past there. Ties into, like, just, like, the physicality of the film, and the objects. I'm someone who, I'm really drawn to artifacts, and, like, I think the objects that exist in the film and the process of making those things real is very much something that I've always been interested in. And the other thing that's maybe a little more meta would be like my primary interest in film when I was a kid was like watching the Adam West Batman film, you know, the like you can't get rid of a bomb.
I love
thing.
that movie. Yeah. What a great
So good.
submarine and everything. Yeah.
Yeah. Or I think, you know, the old like Disney like Zorro TV show.
Oh,
from,
yeah.
Like, black and white. I would watch those things and I wanted to do the things that I saw the characters doing. I wanted to be that good with a sword. I wanted to be able to do Batman things,
right?
You know,
yeah.
And I just thought at the time that like that if you were in a movie, somehow you were being in a movie would let you become that person and be able to do those things. And I didn't have any sense of like sort of movie magic. You know, you would see like The Wires, you know, or you know the behind the scenes for like the Phantom Menace when it shows how they did the scene with like Obi-Wan jumping like 50 feet into the air to like fight Darth Maul. It's just like stuff that like if I just can make a movie, somehow I'll be able to do all of those things. And those are things I really wanted to be in my movie so that I could be Batman, so that I could experience superpowers, you know?
Right.
And I have no interest in being in my movies now at all. But I mean, there is actually, I am actually in my film. There's a point where I just didn't have an actor for a costume, and so it's me. See if you can guess where. I'm not interested in being in the film anymore. But this film in particular, like, is sort of a, you know, it's a quest film. It's a bit of a fairy tale, and I really do feel like I got the chance to go on this adventure. You know, like every single place that's in the film, like I went there, you know, and I like walked these same steps, you know, that you see the character walking. And in the places where you see like, there's some parts that are pretty grueling, like, and I like felt all of those. And so, and I felt the magic of it too. I've gotten to see a landscape sort of transfigured into another world by the camera, you know, and like different slants of light and things. And there's an autobiographical quality to the film in that sense. And then like I can watch it and I can feel each stage of the quest, you know, that this character has gone on, you know, but it's very much been a parallel journey for me, you know.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. That's yeah. Thank you for that. Actually, so
it's a very good question.
Yeah. Oh, well, thank you. Well, look forward to seeing this film, Wild Dogs, and just said it before, but again, congratulations, Andrew.
Thanks.
Absolutely, and thank you for being my guest.
Absolutely, this was a ton of fun.
Yeah, when you complete the film and you're doing a premiere, let's have you back and stuff.
We'll do.
Talk about that experience as well. Thank you for joining me for this podcast, and if you liked the look and sound of that, don't forget you can book one of our spaces at StudioME.me. Don't forget the meetup in Oakland, and if you enjoyed this conversation, do yourself a favor, like, share, subscribe, all the rest of that fun stuff, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.